Say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
In accordance with your faith tradition, I invite you to prayer. Let us pray. Gracious God, we are thankful for the 23 graduates among us today from active duty Air Force, Navy, and civilian status, and our international graduates from Canada and Switzerland who are graduating from Test Pilot School Class of 23 Bravo. We thank you for the opportunities you have given to them during their academics and training, and for the response they have made to better themselves by pursuing challenges corresponding with their knowledge and abilities. We also thank you for the support of their instructors, leadership, and peers, and for the love and support of their family and friends. They are here ready to accept new opportunities and responsibilities. We are proud of their achievements to date, but at the same time humbled at the thought of the expanded service that these responsibilities will entail. When they're tired, give them rest and then energy. When they're angry, give them patience. When they're under stress, give them balance, so that they can discharge their duties with renewed dedication. Let them be a model for those who follow them and an encouragement to those who depend on them. Bless them and their families as they continue their duties, assignments, and over life's journey. Bless the leadership of the Test Pilot School, Edwards Air Force Base, Air Force Test Center, and our nation's leadership. Bless also the food and fellowship that we have been enjoying during this graduation ceremony. And we pray these things in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Bradshaw and Chaplain Bodwell. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. As you entered the dining area, you might have noticed a table at the front. It is reserved to honor our missing comrades in arms. I would like to ask you for a moment of silence as we remember our comrades. A table set for one, the empty place represents our missing from the United States military. This honor ceremony symbolizes that they are with us here in spirit. Some here in this room were very young when they were sent into combat. However, all Americans should never forget the brave men and women who answered our nation's call to serve and served the cause of freedom in a special way. I would like to explain the meaning of the items on this special table. The table is round to symbolize our everlasting concern for the missing. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their motives when answering the call to duty. The single red rose displayed in a vase reminds us of the life of each of the missing and their loved ones and friends of these Americans who keep the faith, awaiting answers. The vase is tied with a yellow ribbon, a symbol of our continued determination to account for our missing. A slice of lemon on the bread plate is to remind us of the bitter fate of those captured and missing in a foreign land. A pinch of salt symbolizes the tears endured by those missing and their families who seek answers. The glass is inverted to symbolize their inability to share this evening's toast. The chair is empty. They are missing. Please charge your water glasses and stand as we raise them to honor America's POW MIAs and our unwavering efforts to account for them. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. I would now like to recognize a few of our distinguished guests. Please hold your applause until they've all been introduced. Our host, Colonel James Valpiani, Commandant, United States Air Force Test Pilot School, and his wife, Mrs. Natalie Valpiani. Mr. David Van Hoy, Technical Director, United States Air Force Test Pilot School, and his wife, Mrs. Halida Van Hoy. Master Sergeant Theo Dinwiddie, Senior Enlisted Leader, United States Air Force Test Pilot School. Mr. Anthony Cram, Senior Executive Service Level 3, Associate Deputy Assistant Secretary of Acquisition, United States Department of Health and Human Services, and his wife, Mrs. Teresa Cram. Major General Evan Derteen, Commander, Air Force Test Center. Colonel Select Marianne Carlin, Deputy Commander, Air Force Test Center, and her husband, Mr. John Carlin. Dr. Eileen Bjorkman, Senior Executive Service Level 2, retired, and former Executive Director, Air Force Test Center. Brigadier General Select Douglas Wickert, Commander, 412th Test Wing. Colonel Ryan Sanford, Commander, 412th Operations Group, and his wife, Mrs. Erica Sanford. Master Sergeant Crystal Erskine, First Sergeant, 412th Operations Group. Colonel Ahave Brown, Commander, 412th Maintenance Group, and his wife, Mrs. Tasha Brown. Lieutenant Colonel Bernhard Berset, Swiss Department for Defense, Procurement, Arma Suisse Flight Test Center, Chief Jet Pilot. Captain Vishwandaham Patula, United States Navy, retired, and his wife, Ms. Sandra Patula. And our guest speaker, Colonel Tucker Hamilton, Commander, 96th Operations Group, and his wife, Mrs. Courtney Hamilton. Please join me in welcoming our guests. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to the family members, commanders, and friends of Class 23 Bravo who are joining us today in person, as well as those watching this ceremony virtually. A special thank you to the people who organized this event: 23 Bravo's graduation committee, the TPS staff, public affairs, multimedia, and Club Miroc for the delicious food.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Major Cram, and despite an attempted coup earlier this year, I am the class leader for 23 Bravo. It is now my privilege to introduce the recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Award. The Distinguished Alumnus Award is presented to a prior United States Air Force Test Pilot School graduate selected by the graduating class that recognizes the incredible contributions of an individual to the flight test community. This person had a 30-year career in the Air Force, serving as a flight test engineer on over 25 aircraft. Notably, they served as the commander of the 846th Test Squadron and 746th Test Squadron. Their passion for the test mission continued after their active duty career as they transitioned into civilian service and served as the executive director at the Air Force Test Center. For her significant and lasting contributions to aviation science, Class 23 Bravo has chosen Dr. Eileen A. Bjorkman, Senior Executive Service Level 2, United States Air Force retired, to receive the Distinguished Alumnus Award. Please join me in a round of applause for our distinguished alumnus.
Well, I'll keep this brief. I know Cinco's dying to get up here and talk to you. So this is something, first I just want to say thank you so much to the class. I'm a little bit overwhelmed when Dave Van Hoy called me and said that you wanted me to do this. I was like, did they get the wrong person? Did they get me mixed up with somebody? But I'm really thrilled to be up here, and even though I'm still a bit amazed that you would pick me for such an award. So, I never thought when I was sitting out there 38 years ago at my own graduation that I would be doing something like this. So, I just want to say very quickly. This is just a starting point. You're walking across the stage tonight, you're getting your diploma, and you know everything you've learned though in the last year that you've been here is going to stay with you throughout your career, regardless of what you go do. If you look at my class, we had people that stayed in flight tests for their whole careers. We had people who went off to be astronauts. We had people who went into acquisition. People who went to the labs eventually, and people like me who kind of bounced in and out of flight test and did a lot of work with modeling and simulation. But TPS provided us the foundation to do all of those different things. the things that you learned this year, or you honed those skills that you already had, you're going to be able to apply that for your entire career, whatever it is that you do. Things like critical thinking, risk management, root cause analysis, those are just some of the things that you've learned and honed your skills in this year that you're, like I said, you're going to be able to use those everywhere. I found every job I was in throughout my entire career, I carried all of that I learned in test pilot school with me. So I just charge you to, first of all, this isn't the end state. Don't stop learning. Be curious. Never stop asking why. And sometimes ask why not. So thank you. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to introduce our guest speaker, Colonel Tucker Cinco Hamilton, United States Air Force. Colonel Tucker Cinco Hamilton is the commander of the 96th Operations Group at Eglin Air Force Base, where he's responsible for the planning, execution, and reporting on United States Air Force conventional munitions tests on the F-15C&E, F-15EX, A-10, F-16, UH-1, HH-60 Whiskey, and MH-139 aircraft, as well as the planning and execution of developmental test and evaluation on multiple Air Force Special Operations Command assets, including the CV-22 and MC and AC-130 aircraft, and providing direct oversight of the Big Safari Rapid Acquisition Flight Test programs. He is also the Chief of AAI Test and Operations for the Department of the Air Force and a graduate of TPS Class 11 Bravo. Colonel Hamilton is a command pilot with combat experience and more than 2,077 flying hours in the F-35A, B, and C, F-15C, D, and E, F-15EX, MC-12 Whiskey, F-18, F-16, A-10, T-38A and C, T-34, and T-6. Cinco, the stage is yours.
Well, thanks, Vader. I appreciate that. I was a little surprised. I was expecting the SRO to introduce me, and I thought that was Toad. Is that not Toad? Kidding, of course. I guess it's an inside joke from 23 Bravo about an insurrection with the senior ranking officer. Ultimately, it's great to be here. It's awesome to be able to share this experience and this privilege with my wife. We loved test pilot school, and we loved commanding here at Edwards. We really think this community is fantastic, and it's great to be back. So it's a pleasure to be able to join you this evening. This patch represents your responsibility to author the future of aviation. To honor that calling, I've decided that this evening I'd like to talk to you about former President Donald Trump, the war in Gaza, and Christianity. Polarizing topics, right? I'm kidding, of course. If we really want to talk about polarization, let's discuss Taylor Swift's latest album, all right? I hear 23 Bravo has some Swifties. Soft Kitty Wrench, is that true? Respect. All right, seriously though, the profession you're about to enter as a TPS graduate requires you to take the polarization that we find in the world around us, the world of acquisition and flight tests, and discern truth. I'm not sure if many of you know this, but acquisition professionals know little of combat and combat operations, and combat operators know little of acquisitions. You all are meant to be translators. But we face our own challenges, our own biases. I'm going to go to a slideshow real quick. Can you guys see the slide right now? Is it up? Okay. What do you see here? Well, do you see a white triangle? There is no drawn white triangle on the screen there. It's a visual illusion. We sometimes need to see things based on what we don't see. You can go to the next slide. Hopefully you can see this one. There's a block in the upper part that shows A, and there's a block that's in the shadow of that cylinder that shows B. And the question is, the visual illusion is, which one is darker? Well, it turns out they're the exact same color. But our mind does not necessarily make that connection. It's a visual illusion. You can go to the next slide. Is the top line longer than the bottom line? No, indeed not. They are the same length, the visual illusion. And one more. You should have two lines. They are also of the same length. Doesn't look like it, though. And for the last visual illusion, The bottom left square, is it the same size as the upper right square? Now, pay close attention to this one. Can you guys see these squares? Can you see the visual illusion? Well, I cannot. This last slide has no optical illusion at all. That bottom left square is indeed shorter or smaller than the upper right square. Bias is a funny monster. We live our lives with experiences which inform our world, and we get led down paths from voices of authority. Yet, the profession you are entering requires equal part knowledge and awareness of our lack of knowledge. Confident in your ability, but humble by being aware of your limits. Trust in your team, but an understanding that your team is flawed, especially if it has F-16 pilots on it. I'm not sure I trust those people. You are all biased as the bottom line. Back in the late 90s, we had a program office evaluate an advanced G-suit for fighter aircraft, a G-suit that Europe had adopted. This new G-suit had much more coverage than the legacy G-suits that we were wearing in the American military. They took the test article to the centrifuge and they asked A-10 and T-38 pilots what they thought. They asked them questions like, does the G-suit make you feel warmer? Is it more difficult to put on? Is it more comfortable? Wrong questions to the wrong people. They should have asked pilots who consistently pulled over 8 Gs if it helped their G tolerance, but they did not ask those questions. They asked the wrong questions to the wrong people. Over in Europe, they are the ones that adopted the G-suit. They had 0 losses of life to G-LOC after they adopted this advanced G-suit. We didn't adopt it in our military until 10 years ago. Dozens of pilots paid with their lives, all because this program office didn't procure the advanced G-suit because it was less comfortable and harder to put on. It's a little more complicated than that. But one of the causes of this failure was that the program office didn't include test pilots school graduates in their evaluation. But before you judge too quickly, you need to ask yourself, why was that? As test professionals, we began to lose our credibility in many circles a while back. We had walked too far away from our roots. We no longer understood the warfighter. I think TPS is partly to blame. It started with test pilot school selection, in my honest opinion. We incentivized the wrong candidates by focusing on what flight tests used to look like in the 90s, 60s through 90s. We selected people who were ready to solve equations of motion and had demonstrated they could master multiple aircraft, but those same people were thrust into mission systems testing or aircraft-specific testing after graduating TPS, testing that required more of a focus on tactics than pedote statics. We need to be credible voices to the warfighter, and yes, we also need people who can conduct flight tests on a plane, a weapon, a widget that do understand equations of motion. I think TPS has been trying to find the balance, and it's not a simple solution, but it took a long time for the school to acknowledge the mission systems curriculum gap. People want change. People want change. You want change. People don't want to change, though. If you want to be a voice to the warfighter, if you want to be a voice for the warfighter to the program office, and a voice of acquisition technology to the warfighter, we need to have a relationship with both entities. We recently wanted to fly a special antenna on an F-15E, the backseat cockpit, that connected the aircraft into Starlink antennas. Satellites, pardon me. The program office kept saying absolutely not. For 9 months, they told us no. However, what they didn't know, and I informed them this past December, is that operational test teams had already flown the modification on their aircraft back in May of 2023, 9 months earlier, after just 1 week of approvals, and it was legal what they did. The program office was upset, and I thought it was fantastic. Man, the look on their faces. So it's great that OT went fast. However, ask operational test what their long-term implementation plan is for this capability. It's horribly inadequate. And they really need the program office to get past, they need the program office to get past that initial demonstration that they conducted. Who is wrong in this vignette? Each party is somewhat right and somewhat wrong. The program office needed to allow us as developmental testers to take more risk. The operational test team simply can't cowboy up everything they want and disregard the complex acquisition and safety processes. As a translator between those two worlds, we can see the arrogance from both sides. But we ourselves have suffered from the same. We walk around with this patch on our shoulder and think the warfighter doesn't get it and the program office doesn't get it. Only we few truly understand how to deliver capability to the warfighter. Our arrogance has got to stop. The world you are entering is not about the equations you learned or the flight test techniques you mastered. It's a life of reinventing yourself while being disciplined with adhering to who you are. Quite a paradox. It's recognizing you may be experiencing a visual illusion, but still investigating the veracity of those who are claiming that we are looking at a visual illusion. We also need to understand technological advancements, but we can't adopt them too early nor too late. The life of a TPS graduate does feel paradoxical at times, a life that you now are initiated into. How do you successfully, practically, live in this world? Well, don't be arrogant. Ask the right questions, challenge the past, take risks. Yes, of course, we mitigate risk. We also need to take risks. Bureaucratic risk, the processes we adhere to while doing things. Programmatic risk, the willingness to make cost, schedule, and performance decisions without all the information. Dare I be as bold as saying flight risk, flying test points, or certain systems without complete confidence in how it will unfold. Or organizational risk, changing the way we organize. The truth that I've seen for the past 12 years as a TPS grad is that we don't take risks. Taking risks would involve reevaluating, changing our business model, our organizational constructs, our need for garnering certain data, our willingness to accept more risk during flight, without completely knowing how it will unfold, but empowering and trusting people to lead the way. You all, test leaders. Emerging technology and competition with other countries demand that we think through the way we've done things and the way we need to do things moving forward. We cannot afford to continue with the status quo. Take a recent conversation I had with the warfighters regarding artificial intelligence. The warfighter was like, yeah, we need AI to help fly me to the tanker so I can take a nap. And then when I get to the battle space, I'll be able to wake up and then I'll be rested so then I can perform more effectively in the battle. And this was a very bright F-22 pilot switch. Kidding, it was a switch. But I want so badly to roll my eyes at this individual, but that's my arrogance. What the warfighter is saying is that they understand that AI can help them. There's much to be celebrated with that mindset. Now I need to help translate the reality of the technology of how it can actually optimize their performance, and it's not as a tool to take a nap. Though that would be kind of nice. Equally, our program offices are ignoring AI because it's not in the roadmap. They live in a world of cost, schedule, performance, and legally have to try and adhere to that world. Ignoring AI is their way of saying that they don't have a requirement to implement AI. I roll my eyes at that sentiment, but again, there's my arrogance. What they're truly saying is they don't understand AI and other emerging technologies. It's actually going to measurably impact their roadmap, but they don't understand it. We are all arrogant about so much. Let's not judge others' arrogance. Rather, let's help illuminate truth with humility. Many in this room know that test pilots delivered auto GCAS to the F-16 and F-35. Automatic Ground Collision Avoidance Technology, auto GCAS. It knows when an aircraft is going to hit the ground and takes control away from the pilot to save the plane at the last possible second. It was implemented in F-16s in 2014 and has saved 12 pilots from hitting the ground. In 2016, we began inquiring about when auto GCAS was going to be ready for the F-35. The answer the program office gave us was 2027. They needed a stronger computer, so they said, on the aircraft to process the algorithm. Myself and Ross LeClaire, who many of you may know, decided we needed proof from the engineers that this was indeed true, Or was it just a visual illusion? We called a summit in January 2017 to discuss. We literally were like, we need to get people together to talk about this, so let's make a super official sounding event so people will show up. So we called it the Autonomy Summit, and people showed up. It worked. However, from the program office to certain corners of Lockheed Martin, to the Department of the Navy, to requirements officers in the Air Force, many people told us no. There was no way of accelerating auto GCAS. We fought tooth and nail to convince them otherwise. It turned out MATLAB 15 had just hit the streets. That's like a software program. It just came out, and if we compiled F-35 code using MATLAB 15, we could find space for the algorithm on their computers. We realized that the Navy didn't care about auto GCAS because ground collisions were an Air Force problem. That's what they would tell us. Instead of rolling our eyes, we compiled the data and proved to them otherwise. The Marine Corps cared more about combat capability. They wanted to deliver another bomb more than saving an aircraft from ground collision. Instead of rolling our eyes, because an aircraft and a pilot is combat capability, we gave them the whole story of autonomy and how auto GCAS was a precursor to much more advanced offensive and defensive autonomous capability, i.e. getting auto GCAS would be groundwork for combat autonomy. We found the right advocates and changed the way we communicated the technology. And the program office told us there was no room in the schedule. Well, I had come from that program office, and instead of rolling my eyes, I found the right advocates. And I went into their schedule and proved to them there was a small gap to implement auto GCAS if we had moved really fast. So it came down to a contentious vote in December 2017, where the night before the vote, a congressman had a conversation with the service secretary and helped secure a thumbs up. I'll leave it at that. That same night, I wrote a letter of resignation as the 461st commander that I was going to submit if the vote went sideways. No kidding. I don't recommend that approach in nearly all situations, but at times you must be willing to sacrifice everything professionally for what you believe, unless what you believe is stupid. Like if you believe Taylor's Reputation album is better than 1989. Nonsense, right? How many of you are wondering now if I really like Taylor Swift or if it's just an illusion? Luckily, the vote didn't go sideways, but that was just the beginning, because now we had 11 months to conduct an 18-month test program. Our team, led in part by Marcia Asensio of 23 Bravo, poured their lives into implementing auto GCAS into the F-35. Fast forward to the end of 2018, 11 months later, testing was complete. It made it into the jets 6 months after that, and we had our first presumed save 6 months after that. Challenge perceptions, communicate shrewdly. Let your passions drive collaboration, not division. One more story. Back in 2014, I was a project pilot for testing the Python 5 missile integration into the F-15s. It's an advanced heat-seeking missile. The test program called for a corner-of-the-envelope missile shot. That meant that I had to fire the weapon, pulling 7 Gs at 10,000 feet, going 1.2 Mach, with a full F-4 drone a mile off our nose. Well, they wanted us to do this mission, which typically required 17 flights in 3. 1 flight to make sure the missile was safe to carry on the plane, 1 flight to make sure it integrated safely into the aircraft avionics, and 1 flight to take that missile shot. How do you think we went so fast? And I mean figuratively, I mean literally, right? We thrust and drag and math and all those things. Figuratively, how do we go from 17 down to 3? As TPS grads, we often want more data than is actually required. Do what is required, but treat every test program and every test point as if our national security depends on it. Don't gold plate your programs. Perfection is an enemy of our profession. And have empathy for what our program officers are dealing with. Deliver for the warfighter with a sense of urgency, something I feel the Air Force often forgets, a sense of urgency. Take what you've learned at this school and challenge the status quo. Challenge your own perspectives. Challenge the organizations you're going to be entering, and hold those leaders responsible to do the same. Listen to one another. Listen to Taylor Swift. She can do no wrong. Serve because America needs you to serve. Become better versions of yourself. Actively pursue virtue. Live in the paradox, which is being a test leader. You are entering a family that few have had the privilege to experience. Speaking of this TPS family, I'm going to mention back in 2005, Captain Laz Gordon, now Colonel and Commander of Arnold, pulled me into the 40th Flight Test Squadron to share with me what it was to be a test pilot, inspired me to apply to test pilot school. In around 2008, I met then Lieutenant Colonel Weed Durteen. And for years, he helped mentor me and even helped encourage me after multiple times of not getting into test pilot school. I have been very thankful and tried to pass that on. Now, it's your responsibility. You have to pass this on. Be the translators you were trained to be. You are the authors of the future of aviation. Now, deliver the future. The warfighter in America are counting on you. God bless 23 Bravo, the Department of the Air Force, the United States of America. Thank you.
Cinco, on behalf of the class, we'd like to say thank you for leaving the beaches of Florida to come out and talk with us in the desert today. Appreciate it.
The graduating class consists of 12 experimental test pilots, 8 flight test engineers, 2 experimental test weapons systems officers, and 1 experimental test remotely piloted aircraft pilot. Included among our graduates are the finest from the United States Air Force, United States Navy, the Swiss Air Force, and the Royal Canadian Air Force. These students have completed one of the most demanding courses in the world. Each student completed over 2,500 hours of academics and 120 hours of flight training. Each student had 6 hours per day of instructor contact time, not including academic and flight preparation time. As a final graduation exercise, the students demonstrated learning from across the curriculum by planning and executing real-world test management projects. Students, please stand as your test management project, also known as TMP, is presented. Class 23 Bravo's projects included Have Blood. The Have Blood TMP demonstrated an integrated cockpit sensing system's ability to measure physiological and environmental data, as well as to assess its utility in recognizing physiological insults. The team partnered with the 711th Human Performance Wing for 18 sorties, totaling 27 flight test hours in Block 30 and 40 F-16D aircraft, 4 sorties totaling 6 supporting T-38C flight hours, and 6 hours of ground test in the Reduced Oxygen Breathing Device, or ROBD. Team members included Captain Tyler Ghost Morris as project manager and flight test engineer, Major Koa Agent Huyn, Captain Clayton Venus Reed, Major Nicholas Jaws Helmer, and Captain Fanny Shoddy Chalet as test pilots, and Captain Stephen Spock Hawking as flight test engineer. Have Kirby. The Have Kirby TMP characterized the sim-to-real gap for both the SHIELD AI and Physics AI agents. A total of 10 AI agents were tested across the test execution window. The team worked with the DARPA Air Combat Evolution, or ACE program, CalSpan, and Lockheed Martin for 11 sorties, totaling 14 flight test hours in the experimental X-62 Vista aircraft, right over there. Team members included Captain Jeremy Scrat-Rohn as project manager and test pilot, Ms. Marcia Dre Asensio, Major David Doss Boots, and Captain Max Wrench Denbin as flight test engineers, and Major Anthony Hash Pipe and Major J. Jammin Patula as test pilots. Have Palpatine. The Have Palpatine TMP investigated radar cross-section test requirement derivation and data collection methodology. The team worked with the Air Force Test Center for 15 sorties totaling 23.1 flight test hours in T-38C, F-16D, and F-35C aircraft, and 6 simulator test hours. Team members included Major Jacob Spear Del Ponte as project manager and test pilot, Major Benjamin Vader Cram and Lieutenant Ethan Soft Kitty Albrecht as test pilots, Captain Christopher Lowdown Kalimlim and Captain Nien Kong Ha as test weapon systems officers, and Captain Michaela Toad Sorensen as flight test engineer. Have Goldeneye. The Have Goldeneye TMP was a classified effort that demonstrated a novel technology involving an F-16 equipped with a Sniper SE pod. The team worked with DARPA for 6 sorties totaling 9 hours at night in the F-16D. Team members included Captain Jordan Champ Snyder as project manager and flight test engineer, Major Robert Bolton D. and Major Samuel Hazard Sewell as test pilot, Captain Benjamin Brick Meyer as test RPA pilot, and Captain Justin Trigger Pung as flight test engineer. And now the Commandant, Colonel Valpiani.
Well, good evening, and thanks for joining us. Before we move on to announce our student awards, I'd like to take an opportunity to recognize a group of outstanding professionals who have been directly responsible for teaching and training 23 Bravo. Would all the members of the TPS faculty and staff, including attached personnel, past and present, please stand and be recognized. And as a special thanks, I'll just mention that due to circumstances beyond the school's control over the last year, we've had about 25% less staff than we normally have, while also more students than we've had in the history of our school in the last 80 years. And so I just want to say a special thanks to all the faculty and staff for your commitment, all the dedication and the long hours to make it possible for us to celebrate here this evening. You guys did a phenomenal job. It is now time to recognize the top individual student performers. Through a combination of graded flying events, academic exams, and reports, as well as ratings from their classmates, a few individuals are honored for the unique success and contribution to TPS and the graduating class. Each of these recipients will receive a personal plaque and have their name inscribed on a trophy displayed at the school. As your name is called, please join me on stage to receive your award. The first award, the Aaron C. George Warrior Award, recognizes the student who most exemplified the warrior-focused attitude to field the best weapon system possible. This award is voted on by members of each class and presented to the student who always remembered the reason why we are here, the warfighter. The award is named in honor of Major Aaron C. George, Class 99 Bravo, who was lost while flying an F-16 photo chase mission with the 416th Flight Test Squadron. TPS Class 99 Bravo has set up a permanent display at Test Pilot School, a Mark 82 500-pound bomb engraved with the names of the award recipients. It's a pleasure this evening to announce that the recipient of the Aaron C. George Warrior Award is Major Jacob Spear Del Ponte. Congratulations, Spear. Our second award, the Ellison Onizuka Prop Wash Award, is given to the one person who contributed the most to class spirit and morale. Captain Onizuka won the award for TPS Class 74 Bravo, and it was subsequently renamed in his memory after he was lost in the Space Shuttle Challenger tragedy. The recipient of the Onizuka Prop Wash Award is Captain Michaela Toad Sorensen. For those of you who are wondering, Toad was the one who attempted the coup. Barely failed. The third award, the Lethen Tittle Award, recognizes the class's most outstanding test pilot graduate. The award is named after Major Frank Lethen, TPS Class 61 Charlie, who was lost in 1966 while flying with the Thunderbirds, and Major David Tittle, TPS Class 55 Delta, who was lost in 1966 while testing the XV-5 vertical takeoff and landing aircraft at Edwards. The recipient of the Lethen Tittle Award is Major J. Jamin Batula. Congratulations, Jamin. Our fourth award, the Raymond L. Jones Award, is presented to the most outstanding flight test engineer or combat systems officer graduate. The award is named for Colonel Raymond L. Jones, a former staff instructor and deputy commandant of the Test Pilot School. He was instrumental in the formulation of the Flight Test Engineering program. The recipient of the Raymond L. Jones Award is Major David Das Boots. Congratulations, Das. Our final recognition is given for individual distinction. The students of Class 23 Bravo have worked extremely hard during this past year. 4 students have earned the title of Distinguished Graduate. When your name is called, please stand and be recognized. The distinguished graduates of Class 23 Bravo are Major J. Jamin Batula, Captain Fanny Shadi Cholet, Major David Das Boots, and Major Anthony Hash Pipe. All right, it's now time to bring Major Benjamin Vader Cram back to the stage to provide his class leader address. The class leader job is assigned to the senior ranking officer, and it is a job that has more responsibility than authority, as the class leader is responsible for leading from within and passing information between the class and TPS leadership. Vader had the privilege of doing all of this while simultaneously being a student along with his classmates. It was a privilege for me to meet with Vader every week over the last year, and he never failed to display the kind of leadership and professionalism that was expected of our flight test leaders. So Vader, thank you for all your hard work as class leader. The floor is yours.
All right, first I'd like to thank Colonel Valpiani and Stig, Miss Julia Powers, and Master Sergeant Dinwiddie, and especially Toad and Dre for all the work you guys put into planning our graduation today. Toad, your trackers were actually useful this time, so thank you. To Fangs and Yeti, thank you for the mentorship, meeting with me every week throughout the year. I think I grew a lot from that. And also thanks for actively working to improve our experience and the program as a whole. To the instructors and staff, we wouldn't have made it here today without you guys. So thank you for your instruction, your dedication, and definitely your patience. We know we didn't make it easy on you, so thank you. To the real heroes, the spouses, significant others, and loved ones of 23 Bravo. It is not lost on us as a class the sacrifices that you all have made to allow us to reach this point today. We know the late nights, the missed meals, the long distance, the solo parenting, feeding and caring for Brick and Wrench, and the non-existent weekends were not easy. So we thank you for your sacrifice and support that allows us to succeed as a class. I'll pause for them. While they're doing that, Lauren, I've got one for you. I'll probably forget it as I walk back down the stairs, so. All right, this is the class leader address to the class. So finally, to my classmates, I couldn't have asked for a better or smarter group of people to go through this challenging year with. I'm extremely grateful for how fast we all came together over tequila and bread, Swiss Independence Day, mass birthday parties, plans to adopt a desert tortoise, and Power Ranger takeovers, and how we succeeded as a class through Slackbot, baked goods, memes, generational wealth, head heralds, and each one of you stepping up to help the class when we needed it. The final part of my address will be a series of toasts, a short toast to each of you. Most of these are inside jokes, so for everyone else, if you hear them laughing, please laugh. And if you don't hear them laughing, please laugh louder. So first, to Agent, for demonstrating a perfect G-strain. Thank you. Yep. To Soft Kitty, for breaking barriers in his service, his species, and his collarbone. To Trigger, for his calm and reassuring demeanor, and for keeping Wrench afloat. To Wrench, for reading an MPG, and for teaching us a new language. Big W, no cap, fire bro. To Shoddy, for giving us Normal Pilot's a hero to look up to. To Das, for knowing the proper spelling of pedo and not sending the email. To Brick, for Tuesday ski trips. To Champ, for turning into a cartoon character whenever you got fired up. To Bolton, for having educational and relevant debates with Hash every morning. To Spock, for watching over the class during every test. To Jaws, for the recent spike in Waffle House stock prices. To Hash, for somehow always returning to equilibrium, and for letting us trash your house every weekend. To Ghost, for the stories we'll never forget. To Venus, for practicing frequency sweeps, #blossoming. To Jammin, for guaranteeing at least one person was always paying attention in class. To Hazard, for max performing his time in the classroom, and for you and Slane, I think you owe me $100 right now. to Lowdown for trick-or-treating and for leading the Short Kings to new heights, to Spear for keeping the class and staff on time and for being a great test leader, to Kong for finally being assertive enough, to Dre for always using her GTC, to Scrat for unbelievable experiences and for letting us know when the moose got loose, and to Toad for creating trackers for everything, creating trackers for those trackers, creating the tracker I'm using right now to make sure I talk about trackers, and Speed, whether you want them or not, you will have trackers at the 420th. And sadly, for the last time, with all of us together, to 23 Bravo. Test around. Thank you. And now a video from Hash Productions to commemorate the past year.
We meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. The greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds. No man can fully grasp how far and how fast we have come. But condense, if you will, the 50,000 years of man's recorded history in a time span of but a half a century. Stated in these terms, we know very little about the first 40 years, except at the end of them, advanced man had learned to use the skins of animals to cover them. Then about 10 years ago, under this standard, man emerged from his caves to construct other kinds of shelter. Only 5 years ago, man learned to write and use a cart with wheels. Christianity began less than 2 years ago. The printing press came this year. And then less than 2 months ago, during this whole 50-year span of human history, the steam engine provided a new source of power. Newton explored the meaning of gravity. Last month, electric lights and telephones and automobiles and airplanes became available. Only last week did we develop penicillin and television and nuclear power. This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels old. So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. We shall send to the moon, 240,000 miles away, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone. And therefore, as we set sail we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
Mr. David Van Hoy, has the faculty of the Test Pilot School tested these degree candidates and found that they have met all requirements for the Master of Science in Flight Test Engineering degree? Very good. Then on behalf of the Air University Commander, by virtue of the authority vested in him by the Congress of the United States, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Master of Science in Flight Test Engineering with all the rights, honors, privileges, and responsibilities here and everywhere pertaining to this degree. "23 Bravo graduates, please be seated. Major General Dertine, sir, if you would please join me on stage for the presentation of graduation plaques and round medal objects. Graduates, as your name is called, please come to the stage left to receive your graduate plaque and RMO.
Lieutenant Ethan Soft Kitty Albrecht, Experimental Test Pilot, United States Navy. Soft Kitty graduated from the United States Naval Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering. Soft Kitty would like to thank his family for being here and providing the foundation for him to pursue his dreams. Soft Kitty is assigned to the 461st Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the F-35. Ms. Marcea Dre Asensio, Experimental Flight Test Engineer, Department of the Air Force. Dre graduated from California State University, Long Beach with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and from the Naval Postgraduate School with a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering. Dre would like to thank her family, friends, and boyfriend for their unwavering support throughout the year. She'd also like to thank her classmates and their spouses for being the best wingmen inside and outside of the classroom. Dre is assigned to the 411th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where she will test the F-22. Major David Doss Boots, Experimental Flight Test Engineer, Royal Canadian Air Force. Doss graduated from the Royal Military College of Canada with a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Engineering and from Carleton University with a Master of Applied Science in Aerospace Engineering. Doss would like to thank his wife, Kristen, for taking a year off from her own career to accompany him on this crazy adventure to another country, for her love and support throughout the course, and for planning a bunch of amazing trips to see what the U.S. has to offer. He would also like to thank his parents for always encouraging his love of aircraft and engineering. Doss is posted to the Aerospace Engineering Test Establishment in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, where he will test all things fixed wing in the Royal Canadian Air Force inventory. Captain Chris Lowdown Kalimlim, Experimental Test Weapons Systems Officer, United States Air Force. Lowdown graduated from the University of Texas, San Antonio with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. Lowdown would like to thank his family for their continual support and his mom, Diane, for everything she has done to allow him to succeed. Lowdown is assigned to the 419th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the B-1B. Captain Fanny Shadi Chalet, Experimental Test Pilot, Swiss Flight Test Center. Shadi graduated from the Georgia Institute of Technology with a Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering and from the French Higher Institute of Aeronautics and Space with a Master of Advanced Studies in Aeronautics. Shadi would like to thank her parents, her family, and her friends for their endless support and encouragement throughout TPS and this American adventure. Shadi is assigned to ARMA Suisse, the Swiss Flight Test Center at Emmen Air Force Base, Switzerland, where she will test the FA-18C and ADS-15. Major Robert Bolton D., Experimental Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Bolton graduated from Stanford University with a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering. Bolton would like to thank his wife, Ashley, for her endless support and patience through all of his education, and his parents, Michael and Leslie, for inspiring his love of flying. Bolton is assigned to the 419th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the B-52. Major Jacob Spear Del Ponte, Experimental Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Spear graduated from Purdue University with a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Engineering. Spear would like to thank his wife, Alexa, for her continual support, patience, and encouragement throughout TPS, and his parents, Ray and Linda, for everything they've done to allow him this opportunity. Spear is assigned to the 416th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the F-16. Captain Max Wrench Denbin, Experimental Flight Test Engineer, United States Air Force. Wrench graduated from Pennsylvania State University with a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering and is working on his Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering through Georgia Institute of Technology. Wrench would like to thank his parents, Lenore and Howard, and his brother Eric for their never-ending support throughout his career. Additionally, he would like to thank all of his fellow students and friends for their moral support. He could not have gotten through the year without them. Wrench is assigned to Data Masked. Captain Nien Kong Ha, Experimental Weapons Systems Officer, United States Air Force. Kong graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. Kong would like to thank his parents, New Ha and Huang Nguyen, and his wife, Ali West, for their love and support throughout this year. Kong is assigned to the 780th Test Squadron at Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, where he will test F-15E, F-15EX, and their weapon systems. Major Nicholas Jaws Helmer, Experimental Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Jaws graduated from the University of Southern California with a Bachelor and Master of Science in Astronautical Engineering. Jaws would like to thank his parents, his brothers, his sister, and his friends for their unwavering support throughout all of Test Pilot School. He could not have gotten through the year without them. Jaws is assigned to the 461st Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the F-35 and rage through the snowy mountains of California with Champ. Captain Stephen Spock Hawking, Experimental Flight Test Engineer, United States Air Force. Spock graduated from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University with a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Engineering. Spock would like to thank his wife, Jenny Lee, for her continual support, patience, and encouragement throughout TPS, and his parents, Murray and Dawn, for everything they've done to allow him this opportunity. Spock is assigned to the 746th Test Squadron at Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico, where he will test GPS systems. Major Koa Agent Huynh, Experimental Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Agent graduated from the United States Air Force Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Engineering and Humanities, and from the University of Hawaii at Manoa with a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering and International Relations. Agent would like to thank Beth for her endless patience this past year. Nurturing the lovely Emmy while being pregnant was no small task, and she did it so effortlessly and gracefully. Agent could not have made it through without his #1 PIC and the support of his family here tonight from Washington and Maryland. Dan and Kyle, you guys rock. Agent is assigned to the 419th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the B-1B and B-2A. Captain Benjamin Brick Meyer, Experimental Remotely Piloted Aircraft Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Brick graduated from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with a Bachelor of Science in Engineering Physics, and from the University of Colorado at Boulder with a Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering. Brick would like to thank his parents, Mike and Julie, for their support, and to his friends for helping him survive the year. Brick is assigned to the 452nd Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California. Captain Tyler Ghost Morris, Experimental Flight Test Engineer, United States Air Force. Ghost graduated from Wells College with a Bachelor of Arts in Physics and Computer Science, and from the University of Colorado Boulder with a Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering. Ghost would like to thank his parents, Dave and Kelly, for always pushing him to succeed, his daughter Journey for keeping him young, and most importantly, his incredible wife Angela for her unwavering love, support, and dedication, and for being the most amazing mother to Journey. Ghost is assigned to the 416th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the F-16 and T-7. Major Tony Hash Pipe, Experimental Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Hash graduated from the United States Air Force Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Engineering. Hash would like to thank his parents, Tim and Deb, for always pushing him to succeed and never give up, his son, Ethan, for keeping him young and teaching him more than he knows, and most importantly, his amazing wife, Rose, for her unending love, support, and dedication to their family. Hash is assigned to the 416th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the F-16 and T-7. Major J. Jamin Petula, Experimental Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Jamin graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology with a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Engineering and from Purdue University with a Master of Science in Aeronautical Engineering. Jamin would like to thank his girlfriend, Lindsay, his true love, adventure buddy, and cheesecake partner in crime. He would also like to thank his parents, Sandra and Vish, for their unconditional love and their emphasis on education. Jamin is assigned to the 40th Flight Test Squadron at Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, where he will test the F-15E and F-15EX. Captain Justin Trigger Pung, Experimental Flight Test Engineer, United States Air Force. Trigger graduated from the University of Michigan with a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering and from the Air Force Institute of Technology with a Master of Science in Aeronautical Engineering. Trigger would like to thank his parents, Alan and Deb, for preparing him for life and allowing him to succeed, and his children, Piper and Claire, for always keeping him grounded on what's important. Lastly, and most importantly, he would like to thank his wife, Megan, for her unending love and support throughout TPS and his life. Trigger is assigned to the 780th Flight Test Squadron at Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, where he will test weapon systems. Captain Clayton Venus Reed, Experimental Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Venus graduated from the United States Air Force Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Engineering and from Embry-Riddle with a Master of Science in Aeronautics. Venus would like to thank his wife, Emma, for her endless love and support this year. It truly wasn't possible without her. He would also like to thank his parents, Dan and Marie, for everything they've done to allow him this opportunity. Venus is assigned to the 418th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the KC-135. Captain Jeremy Scrat Roan, Experimental Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Scrat graduated from Virginia Tech with a Bachelor and Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering. Scrat would like to thank his fiancée, Kelsey, for her incredible support, love, and encouragement throughout TPS, and his parents, Ralph and Susan, for everything they've done to allow him this opportunity. Scrat is assigned to the 418th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the C-17. Major Samuel Hazard Sewell, Experimental Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Hazard graduated from the United States Air Force Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Astronautical Engineering. Hazard would like to thank his wife, Emily, from the bottom of his heart for everything she does. He couldn't do it without her. He would also like to thank his and Emily's parents for their support and assistance. Finally, he would like to thank the creators of various small children's shows for giving him time to study. Hazard is assigned to the 417th Flight Test Squadron at Eglin Air Force Base, California, where he will test the C-130. Captain Jordan Champ Snyder, Experimental Flight Test Engineer, United States Air Force. Champ graduated from the United States Air Force Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering and from the Air Force Institute of Technology with a Master of Science in Aeronautical Engineering. Champ would like to thank his parents, John and Denise, for their prayers and encouragement, and his beautiful wife, April, for her love, patience, and support, and for being an incredible mother to Noah and Maddie. Champ is assigned to the 461st Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the F-35 and rage on the Icon Pass with Jaws in his spare time. Captain Michaela Toad Sorensen, Experimental Flight Test Engineer, United States Air Force. Toad graduated from the University of Texas, Austin, with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical and Computer Engineering. Toad would like to thank God, her family, to include her parents, Chantel and Jeffrey, her brother Corey, and her uncle Eric for their unconditional love and support, as well as Michelle and Wayne for being here. Additionally, she would like to thank her former and current Air Force leadership, TPS staff, and fellow classmates without whom she would not be here. Toad is assigned to the 420th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where she will test the B-21 and become best friends with Vader. Major Benjamin Vader Cram, Experimental Test Pilot, United States Air Force. Vader graduated from the United States Air Force Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Systems Engineering Management. Vader would like to thank his parents for their love and encouragement, his friends for their support, his son Oliver for all the smiles and joy he brings into the world, and most importantly to the person who made this year possible, his amazing wife, Lauren, for her unending love, support, and dedication to their family and this adventure. Vader is assigned to the 420th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California, where he will test the B-21 and have to put up with Toad. Major General Dertine, thank you. Colonel Valpiani, the stage is yours. Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the graduating class and the TPS staff, I would like to thank you for sharing this very special day with us. Please join me in one final round of applause for our newest group of test leaders. We'll have the video start up here in just a second, but before that, the most important sentence of the entire ceremony and the year, Class 23 Bravo, you are dismissed.
We meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. The greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds. No man can fully grasp how far and how fast we have come. But condense, if you will, the 50,000 years of man's recorded history in a time span of but a half a century. Stated in these terms, we know very little about the first 40 years, except at the end of them, advanced man had learned to use the skins of animals to cover them. Then about 10 years ago, under this standard, man emerged from his caves to construct other kinds of shelter. Only 5 years ago, man learned to write and use a cart with wheels. Christianity began less than 2 years ago. The printing press came this year. And then less than 2 months ago, during this whole 50-year span of human history, the steam engine provided a new source of power. Newton explored the meaning of gravity. Last month, electric lights and telephones and automobiles and airplanes became available. Only last week did we develop penicillin and television and nuclear power. This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels old. So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. We shall send to the moon, 240,000 miles away, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.